All right, so we're going deep today into something that's, I think, really interesting. And, we've gotten a lot of questions about it.
Mhm.
Why is it that we see so few openly gay male footballers,
Right.
especially, compared to the women's game, where it just doesn't seem to be an issue at all?
Yeah.
So to really unpack this, we've got articles, we've got historical accounts, we've even got some quotes from players and managers.
Right.
And what's really striking right off the bat
Yeah.
is this stark contrast.
Yeah.
Why such a difference between the men's and the women's game?
Well, it's a really complex issue, I think, and there's a lot of historical baggage that we kind of have to unpack here.
Yeah.
And I think one figure that we really can't ignore is Justin Fashanu.
Yeah.
He was England's first openly gay male professional footballer,
Right.
and he came out way back in 1990.
Wow.
And his story it's powerful, but it's also incredibly tragic.
Yeah. And it really makes you think about the environment back then. I mean, I was reading about Brian Clough,
Oh,
who was
yeah.
Fashanu's manager at Nottingham Forest.
Right.
And Clough, yeah, he was notoriously tough.
Yeah. Tough as nails.
And in his autobiography, he actually details this conversation he had with Fashanu, where he asked him, "Where do you go if you want a loaf of bread?"
Oh, wow.
And Fashanu replies, "A baker's, I suppose."
Mm-hmm.
And Clough continues, "Where do you go if you want a leg of lamb?" "A butcher's." And then Clough asks, "So why do you keep going to that bloody Booth's Club?"
Oh my goodness.
I mean, talk about hostility, right?
Yeah, I mean, those words are just shocking to us now,
Right.
but sadly, they really reflect the prevailing attitudes of the time.
Yeah.
And tragically, Fashanu took his own life in 1998 while he was facing a sexual assault allegation.
Right.
And I mean, you can only imagine the constant scrutiny, the prejudice. It undoubtedly took its toll. And I think it's fair to ask how many closeted players at the time might have seen Fashanu's struggles
Yeah.
and decided it was simply too dangerous to come out.
Yeah. It's heartbreaking to think about the fear that must have instilled in other players.
Yeah.
It's almost like Fashanu's experience became this cautionary tale,
Right.
solidifying the idea that football just wasn't a safe space for openly gay men.
Yeah.
But what I find perplexing is that this fear, it seems to persist even when it's not about players who are actually gay.
Mm-hmm.
We see it with players who are wrongly perceived as being gay.
Yeah, that's a good point, and it speaks to just how pervasive the fear is.
Yeah.
It impacts even those who aren't gay.
Right.
I mean, look at Graham Lasso.
Oh, yeah.
He was a great player for England, married with kids.
Right.
Yet he endured relentless homophobic taunts throughout his entire career,
It's unbelievable.
just because some people considered his hobbies unmanly.
That's crazy. And we see that same kind of abuse with Sol Campbell.
Yeah.
Even into the 2000s, you'd think things would have progressed by then.
You'd think so.
But the chants directed at him were just horrific.
It's a harsh reminder of how deeply ingrained this problem really is.
Yeah.
And what I think is so interesting is that there was a 2009 survey by the Football Supporters Federation. They polled over 4,000 fans.
Okay.
And it found that the vast majority of them supported measures to kick homophobia out of the sport.
So, like, they're saying the right things.
Yeah, they're saying the right things, but there seems to be this disconnect between what the fans say they want and what some players actually experience on the pitch.
Yeah. Why do you think that is?
That's a great question.
I mean, clearly it's not just about the fans, right?
Right.
There's something about the culture of football itself,
Mm-hmm.
maybe even fueled by the media,
Yeah.
that perpetuates this problem.
Yeah, I think you're really onto something there. I think the media definitely plays a role.
Yeah.
We've seen so many cases of blatant sensationalism and harmful language being used to create these narratives around players' sexuality.
Absolutely. Remember the Ashley Cole case?
Yeah.
He actually sued tabloids for fabricating this story about him being involved in a gay orgy.
Oh,
I mean, it just shows how quickly the media can jump to conclusions and reinforce harmful stereotypes.
yeah, it's a prime example of how the media can really contribute to this toxic environment.
Right.
And it's not always outright fabrication sometimes. It's the casual use of homophobic language
Yeah.
that normalizes these attitudes.
Yeah.
Like when The Sun labeled Cristiano Ronaldo a Nancy boy after the 2006 World Cup.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Why is that even considered acceptable?
It makes you wonder, you know what it's really like for players who might be grappling with their sexuality?
Yeah.
within that locker room environment.
It's a world shrouded in secrecy.
Right.
But we can get some insights from what those who've been in that world have to say.
Yeah.
Former manager Alan Smith,
Okay.
he once said, "You can get drunk and beat up your wife, and that's quite acceptable. But if someone were to say I'm gay, it's considered awful."
Wow.
That double standard is just shocking.
That really paints a bleak picture of the priorities within the sport.
It really does.
Yeah.
And it's not just managers Djibril Cissé, who played for Liverpool in France.
Oh, yeah, I remember him.
He even admitted that he refused to kiss his teammates after scoring goals
Really?
because he was afraid of being perceived as gay.
Wow, that powerful.
That just suggests that this anxiety about appearing gay runs very deep.
What does that say about the pressures that these players must face?
It's unbelievable.
I mean, they can't even celebrate a goal naturally for fear of being judged?
It highlights that performative masculinity that dominates the sport.
Right.
This constant need to prove that you're man enough
Yeah.
creates this atmosphere where expressing any kind of vulnerability, including your sexuality, is seen as weakness.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like there's this unspoken rule book, you know?
Right.
And being gay is just not in it.
Right.
And sadly, this kind of pressure to conform, you know?
Yeah,
It's not unique to football. It really reflects a broader societal issue.
that's true. I mean, these prejudices often mirror those found in the larger world, right?
Yeah.
So it seems like tackling this issue within football means confronting these deep-seated societal norms
Absolutely.
as well. But focusing back on the sport, what are some tangible steps that we can take
Mm-hmm.
to create a more inclusive environment for LGBTQ plus players?
Well, I think education and awareness campaigns are absolutely crucial.
Okay.
You know, we need to challenge those harmful stereotypes head on
Yeah.
and foster a genuine understanding of LGBTQ plus experiences.
Right. So like workshops for players, coaches,
Yeah.
even fans
Exactly.
that delve into these issues and promote empathy.
Yeah, and imagine, you know, if we had workshops like that, what kind of impact that could have.
Yeah, it sounds like it's about creating a culture where everyone just feels safe and respected,
Right.
regardless of their sexual orientation.
Right.
But it seems like there's also a need for more visibility.
Right. Oh, absolutely. Visibility is key to normalizing
Yeah.
LGBTQ plus participation in the sport.
Yeah.
I mean, when young aspiring players see people like themselves thriving in the game, it chips away at that fear and isolation they might be feeling.
That reminds me of the Right Behind Gay Footballers campaign
Oh, yeah.
that Stonewall launched with Paddy Power a while back.
Yeah, I remember that.
Remember those rainbow-colored laces they distributed to players across the UK?
Yeah.
It was a simple but effective way to encourage players to visibly show their support.
It really brought the issue to the forefront, I think. And more recently, we've even seen Premier League clubs actively promoting the Rainbow Laces campaign,
Right.
with captains wearing rainbow armbands during matches.
It's encouraging to see those efforts.
It is.
But I can't help but wonder if they go far enough. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, the FA has tried to create anti-homophobia campaigns in the past,
Mhm.
but there have been reports that they struggled to find Premier League players willing to actively participate.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge.
Yeah.
But it speaks to the need to address the root causes of homophobia,
Okay.
not just the surface symptoms.
Right.
We have to tackle the underlying fear and prejudice. Right.
That prevents players from feeling safe and comfortable enough to come out.
That's a tough one.
It is.
How do you change those deeply ingrained attitudes and beliefs, especially within a culture as traditionally masculine as football?
It's a long-term process,
Yeah.
and it requires open and honest dialogue.
Okay.
We need to create those safe spaces where players feel empowered to share their experiences, their vulnerabilities,
Yeah.
without judgment or fear of repercussions.
And that's where organizations like the Justin Campaign and Football v. Homophobia play such a vital role.
They do. They're working tirelessly to challenge homophobia and foster that sense of inclusivity that's so desperately needed.
Right.
But it can't just be left to these organizations. You know,
Right.
everyone within the sport needs to step up and be an ally.
Right.
Players, coaches, fans, we all have a role to play in creating that culture of acceptance.
So allyship is key.
It is.
It means speaking out against discrimination, educating ourselves.
And actively supporting LGBTQ plus individuals within the game.
Exactly. It's about fostering a true sense of community and belonging
Yeah.
where everyone feels valued and respected regardless of their sexual orientation.
And this brings us back to something we touched on earlier, the media's role in shaping the narrative
Oh, the media.
around this issue. How can we ensure that reporting on LGBTQ plus issues in football is more responsible and less sensationalized?
That's a good question. I think media outlets need to move away from that tendency
Mhm.
to treat a player's sexuality as a scandal
Right.
or something to be exploited for clicks and headlines.
Right.
It's about focusing on the individual's talent and contributions to the sport, not their sexual orientation.
So it's about normalizing LGBTQ plus participation in football and treating it as just a natural part of the game.
Exactly. And that normalization can be further fueled by the power of representation.
Right.
Imagine a future where we see more openly LGBTQ plus individuals in all facets of the game.
Right.
Players, coaches, referees, even executives and board members.
Yeah, that kind of visibility would be incredibly powerful.
Would.
It shows young people that there's a place for them in the sport,
Absolutely.
regardless of who they are.
And it's not just about seeing more LGBTQ plus individuals in the game.
Yeah.
It's about seeing them thrive and succeed at the highest levels.
Right.
That's what truly changes hearts and minds.
Okay.
But there's another piece of the puzzle we need to address.
Okay.
Breaking the culture of silence that forces so many players to stay closeted.
That culture of silence seems so deeply embedded in the sport.
It is.
What are some strategies for dismantling it and creating a safer environment
Mm-hmm.
where players feel empowered to be themselves?
Yeah.
That
This
makes-
feels like we're talking about this culture of fear,
Right.
where staying silent is seen as like the only safe option.
Yeah.
So how do we dismantle that and create an
Mhm.
environment where coming out isn't this like career-ending decision?
It takes a multifaceted approach, I think. We need strong leadership from the FA.
And individual clubs,
Yeah.
Establishing clear policies against homophobia
Right.
with real consequences for violations.
Right. So you can't just say it. You have to actually back it up.
Exactly. Actions speak louder than words.
Right.
And just as importantly, we need to see visible vocal support from teammates and coaches.
So it's about sending this clear message
Mm-hmm.
that LGBTQ plus players are not just tolerated,
Yeah.
but welcomed and valued members of the team.
Exactly. When players see that their clubs and their teammates have their backs,
Yeah.
they're more likely to feel safe enough to be open about who they are.
Okay.
And that sense of safety is crucial.
Right.
Because even with all the progress we've talked about, even with education and visibility and supportive policies,
Yeah.
there's still going to be fear.
Yeah. I mean, it's easy for us to sit here and say, come out, be yourself.
Right.
But, we're not the ones facing the potential backlash.
Yeah, we're not the ones on the pitch.
Right, from fans, from the media, maybe even from our own teammates.
Absolutely imagine that pressure of potentially becoming like the face of gay footballers.
Oh, wow, yeah.
That intense scrutiny from all sides.
And the weight of that expectation.
It's a lot to carry. And, maybe a player just wants to keep their private life private.
Right.
And that's perfectly valid too.
Yeah.
The decision to come out is deeply personal and complex.
It's a reminder that we can create a more welcoming environment,
Mm-hmm.
but we can't force anyone to come out.
Right.
It has to be their choice made on their own terms.
Exactly.
It makes you wonder, though, what will it take for a top-level male player
Yeah.
to feel comfortable enough to come out? Will there ever be like a tipping point?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
Some people believe it'll take a global superstar,
Okay.
like a Messi or Ronaldo, to come out and pave the way for others.
Someone with that level of influence could definitely shift the conversation.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, it would be a watershed moment for the sport, wouldn't it?
Without a doubt. But others argue that waiting for a savior is the wrong approach.
Okay.
They say that change needs to happen from the ground up, through all the efforts that we've been discussing,
Right.
creating that truly inclusive environment where any player, regardless of their stature, feels safe to be themselves.
So it's not about waiting for one person to come in and change everything. It's
Right.
about all of us working together to create a culture where coming out isn't this like monumental act of courage,
Yeah.
just simply a personal choice.
Exactly. And it's about recognizing that progress takes time.
Yeah,
There will be setbacks,
of course.
there will be resistance, but the conversation is happening.
Yeah.
And that's a positive sign.
It's a reminder that we're on a journey
Mm-hmm.
and there's still a long way to go. But if we continue to push for education, for visibility, for allyship,
Yeah.
and for a dismantling of that culture of silence,
Yeah.
I think there's reason for optimism.
I agree. We can envision a future where a young footballer's sexual orientation is as unremarkable as their preferred boot brand.
Right. Just another part of who they are.
Exactly, where Coming out isn't a news story,
Mm-hmm.
but simply a personal decision met with a shrug and a good for you, mate, from their teammates.
That's the dream, isn't it?
It is.
Where LGBTQ plus players can just focus on their passion for the game
Yeah.
without the burden of hiding who they are.
And it's a future worth striving for.
Absolutely. It's a future where everyone, regardless of their sexual orientation, has the opportunity to reach their full potential both on and off the pitch.
Couldn't said it better myself.
Well, this has been a truly insightful deep dive.
It has.
It's clear that there's no easy solution here,
No magic bullet.
but the conversation itself is a step in the right direction.
It is. It's been a pleasure exploring this with you.
Likewise.
And for you listening out there, what's one thing you can do today in your own corner of the football world
Yeah.
to contribute to a more inclusive and welcoming environment?
It's a question worth pondering.